Hello, and welcome to the Outdoorsy Diva podcast. I'm your host, Lauren, the Outdoorsy Diva. Thanks for joining. All right, adventurers, hello. Welcome to another episode of the Outdoorsy Diva podcast. We are back to having guests. I know you've been listening to me for like the last month of my monologue style episodes and these virtual journeys I've tried to take you through via your ears, since I know a lot of us aren't able to go places and I'm still able to get out and do some exploring. So today, I'm really happy to have a new friend. We have met on Instagram and we're friends in real life. We just haven't met yet, but she's amazing. And her name is Nicole Snell of Girls Fight Back. So we're going to talk to her all about her wonderful company and her adventure. She is an outdoor adventure badass. So I can't wait for you to learn more about her. So Nicole, say hello to the people.
Hello, everyone. It's so awesome to be here. And I think you are an awesome, inspiring adventure badass yourself. And I'm just so grateful to be here. So thank you for having me.
Awesome. So go ahead and let people know, what you do and tell us about Girls Fight Back.
So, my name is Nicole, and I am an international speaker and a self defense instructor. I'm the CEO of Girls Fight Back, which is an organization that was founded in 2001 by Erin Weed in honor of her friend Shannon McNamara to offer self defense, personal safety, and violence prevention tools to women and girls around the world. And we teach simple, practical, empowering, educational and entertaining seminars. Primarily, we used to do colleges before COVID, and now we do virtual. We do a lot of work with colleges, corporations, private groups. We work with the military now, and I took over the company last year after being a speaker with them for 6 years. And I just believed so much in the mission of giving women these tools of how to defend themselves and how to live their life how they wanted to, with confidence and freely without limits. And I just knew that it was my calling to take over the company and see where else I could lead it. And I really love what I do, and I'm super passionate about it. We also offer gender inclusive programs because everyone can benefit from learning these skills. And I started a series called Outdoor Defense back in the end of 2019, which combined my love of self-defense and my also love for solo adventuring and solo traveling to offer people some skills they could use, self-defense and safety skills they could use to feel powerful and confident going out and doing these solo adventures and doing these solo travels.
I love that because I think safety is key. And I think that's probably the biggest barrier that I know I hear from especially other women about doing things solo, about traveling solo, about doing things outdoors solo, is that fear and that, worried about safety. So, can you tell us a little bit more about some of like the specific services or things you teach people?
Yeah, absolutely. So, Girls Fight Back is a 75-minute seminar, and I have several other programs under the Girls Fight Back umbrella. So, I do Students Fight Back, which is our gender inclusive version. I have one that I just created called Yes, I'm Hiking Solo, specifically to address the, solo hiker, solo runner, solo adventurer crowd. I have one that I do for the military. I can do it for anyone, but I primarily done this one for the military called Boundaries for Personal Empowerment. So, what I teach is a combination of physical and verbal skills, because a lot of self-defense is the non-physical aspect. So many people hear self-defense and they think immediately like fighting, knees to the groin. And yes, that's part of it. It's the most dynamic part of it. But so much of how we manage our safety and go through our lives is the non-physical portions. It's being aware of of our environment, of our situations. It is using our intuition and learning to trust it. It's learning that we don't have to be nice to somebody. especially if someone's making us uncomfortable. We can speak up for ourselves and we can set boundaries. How close do I want to let someone get to me? And, what can I say to someone to get them to go away? How can I hold my body in a way that looks very confident and could be a deterrent for someone who is looking to target a person that they want that person to be vulnerable or accessible? How can I make myself look like none of those things? And then how can I use physical skills to defend myself if I need to? So the seminar kind of takes us through a layered technique. We start with the non-physical stuff because those are the things you use every day, even with your friends, even with your family. I'm sure, I don't know, do you have a family member that ever hugs you don't want to be hugged, or a friend?
Right. There's definitely a few creepers, if you will, that you're like, ugh.
Yes. So it's like, how do you communicate and set your boundaries, not just with strangers, but with people in your life, which are all very helpful strategies that help us feel more confident. And then I teach some very simple self-defense skills as well that we practice. When we did live events, everyone would stand up and practice. In the virtual world, we still stand up and practice because these are things that we can just do. We don't have to be training and practicing on anybody. And then I also a lead instructor with Impact Personal Safety, which before COVID, we were full force, full contact in class in person. Now we're online, so we're obviously not full contact because we can't have people in there, but we are it's a team taught, it's woman led, and there is a padded instructor as well. So the padded instructor is the one that dresses up in the suit so that students can hit full force and practice the skills full force, so that they can get that adrenaline, they can understand what it's like to have that adrenaline moving through your body, and how to fight through that, how to move through the freeze response, how to get that procedural memory. So Girls Fight Back is kind of, it's like the introduction to the concepts of self-defense. And I do it for large scale events. I can do small too, but it's for like organizations that have big groups, whereas Impact is for smaller groups so they can practice the skills, in a smaller classroom type of environment, and then they can learn the skills in that type of adrenaline state. So I love being able to do both because it's just they complement each other so well.
I love and thank you for explaining that. So I, for one, kind of only envision the physical aspect as well, right? Not necessarily, the other part of that, just in the mental part, the what to say, how to position yourself, your posture, how all of that feeds into still protecting yourself and setting boundaries. In my head, I was picturing the person in like that suit and you just get to go at them and whack them.
I mean, that's a big part of it. I mean, I will admit that's one of my favorite parts of class when I'm teaching Impact, but we show those are the fights that we'll show, and we'll show clips online and things like that because it's kind of the most dynamic thing to show. But what we don't get to show is all the other elements of class that layered to that moment. Like, you don't walk in that first thing and that's the first thing you do. We have a discussion about safety, we learn about body language, we learn about all those things, and then we learn the verbal skills too. And one of the hardest things for students, at least what they tell us, is the verbal part is the hardest part. So they'll have to face off with a padded instructor who will just have sunglasses on their face to obscure their face, because they're not going to be hitting them. But this person will come up using, assaultive language, calling you names, saying really inappropriate things to you. And you have to talk to them. You have to practice. What do you say to this person who's escalating the situation? How can I get them to walk away? And for a lot of students, that's harder than actually hitting somebody, because now we have to think. We're in this adrenaline state and we're not ever taught how to think and what to say in those moments. So that is really good practice for them. And then we layer that with the physical. And how is it when you're talking to someone and then they come forward and then attack you? Well, then what do you do? And everything we teach in Impact is gross motor skills. It's not complicated moves. It's not, super stylized, fancy looking movements. It's very simple. What can someone do who doesn't have a lot of athletic training, who isn't maybe super coordinated, maybe they have injuries, maybe, it's skills that anybody, regardless of their age, their gender, their body type, their experience level, can do these very simple skills because it's baked into your body in the adrenaline state.
I love that. And I was going to ask you that. Was it, what were the limitations to, someone actually being able to put this into practice? And that's really great how you have to practice the verbal part because I know, me being the naturally militant person that I am, my response probably has four letters in it, and that's probably not always best to de-escalate a situation. So I too could use definitely some training in ways to respond that maybe won't make me have to have a physical altercation in an instance like that where somebody is like really coming for you and trying to get under your skin. That's wonderful.
And one thing too that we really try to emphasize is that self-defense is not about what you should do. We don't give you a list of things and say, "Hey, you have to do these things." And, "Hey, if this situation happens, here's how you respond." Because that's not how the world works, you know? You may face a situation where using a four-letter word is going to get you out of that. But you may be in another situation with a completely different person where you're going to assess and be like, now I need to use a different strategy." And it's about giving you choices and giving you options so that no matter what you face, and we all are going to face a variety of situations in our lives, we have a choice about how to respond. And if one thing doesn't work, then we have something else that we can try. And it's about giving you options.
I love that. I love it. Now, let me ask you, so do you see a disparity with, BIPOC women taking self-defense classes and making an intentional effort to learn these kinds of skills and these kind of tools? I mean, I can speak for me as a Black American woman. I don't know of any of my friends in my circle, as adventurous as we all are, who've actually taken some form of something like this. Now, I know people who, they are gun owners and, they've done that, but this type of training, I don't know any. So, is there a disparity?
I feel like there is. And sometimes self-defense, it's hard sometimes because people will think that they'll need it, but then it takes a lot of courage to actually take the class or sign up or actually go through with it, because a lot of times people are under the misconception that it is just a physical. And if someone's like, "Yeah, I know how," or, and even men too, we've had men that take our class that have said like, "Wow, I didn't realize that there's all these other layers to it and I can use these in other aspects of my life." Or there's also the stereotype that, "Oh, well, men just know how to fight." Or, "Oh, well, I already have had all these, fights in my life. Like I don't need a self-defense class." So it's about educating people on, there's so many different layers to it, and there's so many more things to learn. And yeah, I absolutely think there's a disparity between the amount of BIPOC women that have taken classes and white women who've taken classes. And I think that has to do with accessibility, economics, geographic location. Like, is there someone who's offering a self-defense class where you can take it? Can you afford to take it? Is it addressing things that are going to be unique to your situation and your environment and the things that you are experiencing in your life? And I think that there needs to be more done. And that's what I am trying to do now that I'm the owner of Girls Fight Back, is I want to do more to reach out to communities who have not been able to access this training and be able to offer it to them, because I feel like it's so important. I wish I had learned this stuff when I was in elementary school or junior high or high school, before college, definitely, to understand my own power and how I can speak up for myself. I don't have to be nice all the time. I don't have to apologize for setting my boundaries. Just having that knowledge can help you in so many different aspects of your life. And also, what a lot of self-defense classes I feel like don't take into account is the unique experience of BIPOC individuals. And, we just did a class, we've done a couple classes with Impact, where I taught a class specifically for BIPOC women. And, we address things like, hey, there's a lot of stereotypes about Black women, about if we use our voice, now we have a stereotype of, oh, the angry Black woman, that now we have to take into account as we're setting our boundaries, or maybe a white woman may not have to think about that same thing. Or the fact that if we are encountering someone who's escalating a situation, maybe for someone who's not BIPOC, calling the police is a viable option for them. But we have to think about, is calling the police going to make this worse? Are they going to target me? Is my life going to be in danger because of this situation? And is this
Right.
person that I'm dealing with gonna lie about what's happening? So there's other layers that we have to kind of unpack. And a lot of what we discussed is, de-escalation strategies, and the understanding that, like, the world that we live in is not fair. And we shouldn't have to think about these things when it comes to our personal safety, but we do. It's realistic that we have to. So how can we be the most prepared as we can be and still go out and live our life and feel as confident doing that as we can?
That is such important work, and I'm so glad you felt called to this because it is definitely needed. All right, we're gonna switch gears a little bit. And so, you are an outdoor enthusiast and nature lover. That was how we got connected online. So tell us about your nature origin story. What sparked your love of nature, and what do you love most about it?
I grew up near Joshua Tree National Park. My dad's a retired Marine, so there's a Marine base out there, and I had the whole desert as my playground as a little kid. My family wasn't outdoorsy, but you could not keep me out of the dirt. I was collecting rocks, I was catching lizards, I was watching the sunsets. I've just always loved being outside and seeing, the animals, the birds, or, finding something new, discovering a new plant. It just always called to me. I'm so curious. I'll take a path and then say, "Oh, I found somewhere else that goes this direction. Where does that go?" And then I'll go off and I'll explore that. Or, I'll hear of a place and I'll say to myself, "That seems like something really fun that I want to do," or "I've never been there. I want to experience it for myself." And I'll go off and do that. So I kind of always been into adventure and nature, especially. I'm one of those people that I can just sit there and just watch the sunset and watch all the colors change and just breathe it in and just relax into it. I just feel so connected to nature. I feel like I really feel like it's a part of me. It really is. It's so intuitive for me to just want to be out where I'm just by myself and I can just experience things in my own way. And as I became an adult, because there's a lot of things I wasn't able to do as a kid. Oh, when I became an adult and I didn't have any limits, you better believe I was doing everything I could. I was like, here's my list of things I'm going to do, and let's start checking them off.
I love it. I love that. And I too realize, I have always had that appreciation for just the simple stuff in nature, as simple as a sunrise or, a sunset. So I love that. And I love how, when you were able to, as an adult, to do it and immerse yourself in it, you just went for it. So tell us like about one of your most memorable adventures that you've had.
Oh my gosh, that's so hard because I've had so many. I would say one of my most memorable ones, I was in St. Martin on a solo trip, and I had connected with someone on couch surfers, not to surf their couch, but just I thought it would be safe to at least know one person on the island in case there was an emergency, which there ended up being a hurricane, which is a whole other story. But it's a good thing I had connected with this person because they let me stay in their house while Hurricane Earl hit because I had no idea what to do. Anyways, so I connected with this man and his family, and he told me about this protected reef. There's a spot in St. Martin where boats, kayaks, no personal watercraft can go. It's a protected reef. The only way that you can get there is to swim there. And it's about half a mile to three-quarters of a mile out into the ocean. And he was like, "I can take you there if you want to go. We just have to make sure the tide is right." And the day that we decided to go, the tide was right. And I swam half a mile into the ocean with flippers and a snorkel, and we snorkeled at this reef right at the edge of the breakwater. Like you could feel the surge of the ocean, and you can't go too far, otherwise you get sucked out to sea. But it was amazing because nobody else gets to see that. It's so protected, and so many different colored fish and plants, and I just felt like it was it was so special because not many people got to see it, and saw stingrays on our swim back. It was great.
Oh, that is so beautiful, Nicole, and I'm so jealous. That is like the epitome for me. That could have easily been me. Actually, it kind of was me this past December. The listeners don't even know this yet. So, I went to Antigua. We haven't talked about this trip yet, in December, and the owners of the glamping camp that I stayed at took me out on their personal boat on my last full day on the island. And they took us to a protected area where you can dock, but it's a deserted beach. Like there's no way to get to this beach from land. unless you come by boat. And so she was telling me there's like this tidal pool over there and it's going to have fish in it. She's like, you want to swim? And I was like, in open water from the boat to the shore. It was a good ways away. And I'm not always that confident in open water. I can swim. I'm a decent swimmer. I'm no Michael Phelps or anything, but I'm a decent swimmer. But it was just intimidating to me. I didn't have a noodle or a vest or anything. I was gonna have to like really swim, but that adventurer in me couldn't pass it up because it was like tidal pool, fish, protected, must sees. And so I did it. And she, I swam with her and we made it. I had never been so happy to feel sand beneath my feet when I could finally stand up. But we made it and then we walked down to where the tidal pool was and it was amazing. So I totally relate to that kind of experience. It's magic. It is complete magic. Okay, we have time. Tell us another one. Give us one more.
Do you want a happy story or do you want like a, oh my gosh, I can't believe this happened? Happy story?
Happy story.
Okay, let me think of another happy story. Gosh, there's been so many cool things that I've done. I'm just trying to think of like what would be a good one to share. Okay, so another cool story I have is I was on a solo trip to New Zealand and I was part of a tour group that I had joined when I got there. And we stopped to do the Tongariro, but because of the rain, we had to wait an extra day. So we had this day that was kind of like an off day. And they told us that we could go to this place called Taranaki Falls. And I was like, yeah, heck yeah, I'll hike in the rain. It doesn't matter. I have all my rain gear. My stuff wasn't really as waterproof as it should have been. It was one of my first trips and my first times like getting gear and I didn't have the right gear. Anyways, we're hiking in the rain. My boots are soaked. I'm getting wet in my clothes. And we came to this like little, like tiny, like trickling waterfall. And I'm like, well, okay, like this is nice. It was still a nice hike. All right. We made it. And then like the trail kept going and I was hiking with a friend that I had met and she was like, we could probably keep going. And I'm like, yeah, why don't we just keep going? Like, maybe there's something else up ahead. That wasn't the waterfall. There was a whole big waterfall, like down, like 100-foot waterfall, like down the way. And I had almost turned around because we're like, oh, this must be it. And then we got there and it's just like this towering, crashing waterfall. And of course it's raining and you can climb behind the waterfall. So of course I had to go and climb behind the waterfall to like see from the outside. And it was just amazing. And it was like probably one of my most uncomfortable hikes because everything was wet. My shoes were wet. My socks were wet. My clothes were wet. It was kind of cold outside. And I said to myself, no, I want to see this. Like I'm all the way in New Zealand. When am I going to come back? Am I really going to pass this up because I'm wet? Now I'll just dry my clothes at the hostel and figure it out.
Exactly. I love it. I love it. You have amazing stories and I love how you're showing people, that both of these adventures you had cuz you were traveling solo. Like you didn't wait on your friends, you didn't wait on your homegirls, you didn't wait for, a bae to whisk you away. You just planned the trip and went for it. So, what is it that you like about solo travel?
For all the reasons you just said, I want to do things on my own schedule. I don't want to have to wait for anybody else. I want to be able to change my mind at the spur of the moment and not have someone be upset with me because they wanted to do this or have to stop and choose because, oh, we said we were going to do this, or I want to do this, or I want to leave now, or I'm done. I'm tired. I want to go home. Like I'm okay with splitting off from the group, and not everyone who travels with the group wants to do that. They're not always comfortable being on their own. And I tend to be a very, accommodating person. Like I want people to enjoy their time when we're all together. So I will be the first one to be like, okay, well, if you want to do that, I'll go do that with you to kind of make sure that they're taken care of because I want them to feel comfortable. And when I'm solo, I don't have to do that. I can change my mind. I can wake up early. I can decide to sleep in. I can change my mind at the last second. I can spend 5 hours in a place I only plan to do one. I don't have to be beholden to anyone else's schedules or wants or needs. It's just all about me and what I want to do. And I know that sounds very selfish, but that's the truth. And I want to feel free to be able to do that. You're never really 100% alone. You may get there alone, but you're going to meet people. I meet people at the hostels all the time. I meet people on the tour buses. You meet people in the restaurants. You meet people at, like, there's been times I've been somewhere and they're like, oh, hey, where are you from? Oh, I'm from here. Have you seen this yet? No, I didn't even know that was a thing. Where is it? And you get the information of like how to go do another adventure because someone gave you a heads up. So I feel like you're always meeting people and you're never really 100% alone.
Yep, I completely agree. That is exactly what happens when you go somewhere. Somebody's going to be like, hey, did you know this was there? Or one of the locals, they're going to be more apt even to try and like help you and tell you where the cool things are and share with you.
Wishing you could live a more adventurous life? Well, you can. I'm Lauren R. Gay, your adventure coach, and I've developed the 30-day program, 30 Days to Liftoff, to guide you out of your comfort zone and on your way to more adventures in your life. In this 30 days, you will feel empowered to live the adventurous life you desire. You will give yourself permission to break out of your box, and most importantly, you will move forward and live the life that you will design for yourself. To find out more, visit www.laurenrgay.com and book your adventure coaching session today.
So now, you are kind of in this outdoor recreation culture, online. You share a lot of pics with us from your adventures, your hikes in nature. And as we know, our outdoor industry is still not the most diverse when it comes to marketing and to branding. So, what barriers do you think there are? In the industry, why is it still this uphill battle for us to be seen?
I think it's because there's so many stereotypes and there's a lot of racial injustice and systemic racism that is still so baked into our country. And we can just talk about the US for right now. Years ago, Black people, we weren't even allowed to go out and do these things. There was segregation and there were a lot of legal barriers and things we just were told we can't do these things. And as we're breaking through those, there's still stereotypes not only that are pushing against us, there's also a lot of stereotypes within our own communities. I don't know how many times you've heard your friends say like, oh, that's something white people do, or oh, that's a white person activity, or I don't do that. And I don't think we should be limiting ourselves, first of all, because if I want to do something, I don't care if someone else of another ethnicity does it too, I'm going to do that thing. Like, so it's like trying to push back against the judgment that we might have in our own communities about what activities we should or shouldn't be supported in doing. And then within the brands themselves, a lot of times, since so many outdoor activities have been white, quote unquote, for so long, because people, BIPOC people haven't been encouraged or empowered or given access to do these activities or shown doing it. If they are doing it, they're doing it kind of, under the radar because people aren't looking for them. They tend to feel like, oh, no, that's not an activity that a Black person does or a Latinx person does, things like that. So it's really about breaking through those stereotypes. It's about these brands need to go and find these stories. They need to understand that, these activities, the outdoors is not just for one race of people. It is for all people. And as much as nature doesn't care what you look like, the people you encounter in nature hold stereotypes and can make it unsafe for you. And by brands making a more concerted effort to show BIPOC people in their marketing, in their branding, hiring them on their executive teams so that you can have their voice as a part of the voice that is making the final decisions on how clothing is made and style and fit, and how to do campaigns that aren't virtue signaling, and just doing it to show something, like really prioritizing Black lives and BIPOC people. We need to have that, because then it's a change from the inside out, and then you have more people seeing that there are BIPOC people in the outdoors because you see it in their marketing, you're seeing it on their websites, on their social media, things like that. Not only does that give the people who may be racist and hold racist opinions about what Black people can and can't do, they're seeing, oh, and then slowly they're being shown this, and slowly that's going to have to chip away at their stereotypes because now they're seeing it front and center. But then it also gives us something in our own communities, our Black communities, of being able to see ourselves represented and being like, oh, whoa, like I've always wanted to try that. And now I see someone who looks like me. Like representation is so important, and that can help break through the barriers as well of any stereotypes we may have limiting ourselves.
And I love how you point out the fact that it has to come, internal. It's not just slap a Band-Aid on it and put some Black people on your Instagram. That's not enough. And we can't stress that enough. But this is why I asked this question of all of, my Black guests that I've had on here with that experience. And we are all saying the same thing, in a different way, pointing out these different layers. And hopefully they are going to finally start to listen. But having people internally to help drive those decisions, understanding that, yes, we do have things specific to us and our bodies and our culture and, our life experiences that we have to take into consideration that other people don't. Even when you talk about across the spectrum of people of color, Black people still have an innate different set of circumstances from other people. Our experience in this country in particular is different, and that has to be taken into account. You can't just paint diversity with this big wide brush as everyone likes to do. Like, I hate to see that in numbers and in facts and figures when they just gloss over it as like, oh, we have this many people of color. Yeah, okay, but how many of them are Black? Because it matters. It
Yeah,
absolutely matters.
or brands that'll say, oh, we have a lot of women on our team. It's like, no, you can't interchange one marginalized group for another. Like, it's not the
Right.
same. And like, one Black person doesn't speak for all Black people, so you need a variety of perspectives in there to get the full picture.
Exactly, because we are not a monolith.
No, certainly not.
So I did want to ask you now, have you ever had to use any of, these badass defense, skills when you've been traveling or in the outdoors? You do a lot of things by yourself, hike, camp, solo traveling. Have you had any scary run-ons that you don't mind sharing about with us?
I've had to use my verbal skills more than once. Yes. And the one time that stands out the most to me was I was on a solo trip in Peru, and I was there to hike the Inca Trail. I started in Lima, and then took a bus tour all through the south and did some stops, and then came up to Cusco. And then Cusco, I stayed there a couple days, did the Inca Trail, stayed there a little bit longer, and then did the Rainbow Mountains. But anyways, I was in the marketplace in Cusco, and I was walking, and it was like an outdoor market, but there was like a big building where they had these, these columns, these pillars kind of outside the building that like holds the roof up, and you walk. I'm so bad at trying to describe. I can see it in my head, but it's hard to describe. It's outdoors, but there's like an outdoor roof, and there's like these columns that hold the roof up. So it's like outside and then a column, and then, space, column, space, column. And I was walking, and I noticed this man would go behind a column, and then when I would pass the column to the next one, he would come out behind quickly and go to the next column. Like, he was following me and he was watching me. And I noticed it. And the first thing I did is something I always teach people not to do, or to avoid doing, is to avoid denial. Avoid telling yourself, no, this can't be happening, because that's a disservice to us to ignore a problem, a potential problem. We take our power back by acknowledging there's a problem, because then we can figure out what to do about it. And I was like, no. I'm just being ridiculous. I am imagining it. He's just walking. But after like the third time, I said, no, he's following me. So I turned around and I faced him straight on. I didn't even put my hands. There's a ready stance that you put your hands in to set a boundary. I didn't even get that far. I just turned around and kind of put my hands like this and just stared at the place where I knew he was going to come around the pillar. And he comes around the pillar and he sees me, he stops. And he looks at me and I'm looking at him, and we stared at each other for like 10 seconds, and he turned around and he walked away. And I was like, well, there is my answer. He was following me. But by the sheer fact of me turning around and acknowledging him, now he didn't have the upper hand anymore. Now it wasn't predator prey. Now it was like, okay, now you're facing off someone who's aware of you, who sees you, and now can defend themselves if they needed to. You're not creeping behind somebody. I don't know if he meant harm, if he was just curious about me, whatever, but my intuition told me something was wrong, and that's how I handled it. And that's a success story. To not have to fight, that's a success story. I teach people how to fight so that they don't have to fight. The best fight's the one you never have to fight. So all the other skills that I teach are hopefully going to help you manage your safety so that you don't have to fight. But you know what? If you have to fight, you're worth fighting for. I've never had to strike anyone so far, and knock on wood, I hope I never do. And I feel real sad and real sorry for whoever decides to choose me as a target, because I'm going to take them down. They're going to be real sad they woke up that morning. And I want every woman I train to be that woman. I want every woman to be that woman that someone's going to be like, oh no, I don't want to mess with them, because if I do, it's just going down. Right? Imagine if we all had that in us and we believed it, how strong we would all be. That'd be amazing.
It just gave me chills. Like, even just hearing you tell that story and talk about, listening to your intuition in particular, and how, you turned to face them head on. And I guess in my mind, I was thinking, I can't honestly really think of a time even that prevalent, but I have kind of felt somebody staring at me like a little too long from a distance, and I pride myself on my resting bitch face. I think it works to my advantage when I need it to. And I can very much look like this is really not worth the attempt today. I think that helps me out quite a bit, because I have that look when I'm in that mode. Not all the time, but when I travel, I do not have the welcoming come talk to me face on. And so even when people do approach me to say hi, I'm thinking in my head, you must really see something else, because I know that I'm giving you the leave me alone look. But no, I really do love to hear you explain that to everyone, about taking that power and not giving them that advantage, and acknowledging your intuition and your feelings and your discernment. That's super important. And I'm glad you haven't had to kick anybody's butt yet.
Thank you. I am glad too.
And now I don't want to say yet. I hope it doesn't happen, but I am glad that it hasn't happened.
Yeah,
but I know you
Me
could
too.
take them.
I would. I would. But I don't. That's always one thing that people will say to me. Like, I'll tell people that I'm a self-defense instructor, and they'll say, "Ooh, could you take me on?" And I'm like, "Well, yeah, I could, but I'm not going to. Like, do you plan on trying to hurt me? Like, I'm not going to just fight you to fight you. Like, I don't teach people how to fight. It's not self-defense. At least the self-defense I teach, it's not combat. I'm not teaching you how to like trade blows with someone like you're in a ring, or you're like having this like organized fight. Like, that's not what it's about. It's about how fast and how bad can I hurt you so that I can get to safety. There's nothing fair about it. So it's like, you're talking about, oh, would you fight me? I'm like, no, I'm not going to. Like, they're talking like you're going to sit there and spar. It's like, no. Like, I use these skills like for emergency purposes only. Like, my life is in danger. Here's what I'm going to do to get out of it.
Right. And are there any women who like express any concerns like about doing this, and their significant others being concerned and not wanting them? You know what I mean?
There's some women, women come to us or come to me for a lot of different reasons. Some are survivors. A lot of them are survivors. Some of them are currently in situations. Some of them have had situations in the past, or are just concerned about things in the future. Everyone comes for their own reasons. And sometimes, women will say like, oh, I don't know if I could actually hit somebody, and what I try to teach them is that you are worth fighting for. Like, your life is worth fighting for. You have to believe that. You have to know that. And sometimes I'll try to put it into perspective of like, if someone's a parent, or if someone is a guardian for maybe a younger sibling, or even people with their animals are very protective. And I say, well, what if someone came and tried to do something to your child or your sibling or your little niece that you're walking with, or your dog? Like, what would you do? And usually their face turns real hard, and they're like, oh, like, I would destroy them. And I said, great, give yourself permission to do that for you, right? We have to be willing to be able to do that for ourselves. And So that's how I address those concerns. And sometimes people come because, their significant others want them to take the class. They want them to feel more confident, or maybe they've expressed to their significant other that they want to feel more confident, and then they have that support, which is always great because, I don't want us to feel like we have to rely on someone else. We don't have to rely on our significant others or our older brothers or our parents or someone else to come and save us. We are completely capable of saving ourselves. And when we own that fact, we become so powerful.
I love it. I love that. Now, let's talk about when things don't go right. So, I always like to talk about my misadventures because I think transparency is really important. Like, I want people to know your best laid plans, something is not going to go right. And you just expect that it's going to happen and you do it anyway and you go with the flow. So, tell us about one of your misadventures.
I just gotta say, I feel like the misadventures make the adventures worth it in the first place. If everything goes according to plan, is it really an adventure? It's kind of these things that come up that really like give you a good story to tell. I always say that if something goes wrong, I'm like, hey, we're having an adventure. It's gonna be a great story one day. So the one that stands out for me was this was my trip to Peru, and I was on the bus we'd seen Nazca, and then we were supposed to drive to Cusco. And for some reason, one of the roads was broken. Now, there had been an earthquake. And so the tour company was like, okay, we need to switch you. So the people that are going to Cusco, we're going to send you on a different bus. And this bus that we've been on is going to go somewhere else. So we went and waited at this train station. And I was like, well, the bus we were on was really nice. Are we going to be on a nice bus? And they're like, oh, yeah, we were not on a nice bus. I get extremely car sick. I'm motion sick, like you would not believe. Boat sick. Oh gosh, I'm just the worst. It hasn't stopped me from doing anything, but I am just a mess. Like Dramamine's my best friend. So we get on this bus, which wasn't as nice as bus as the other bus, and it's super packed with people. And I'm like, okay, whatever. I'm going to be on this bus for the next 14 hours to get to Cusco. Okay, that's fine. So we're going, and it was dark when we started the drive, and we're winding through all these roads, I'm trying to sleep so that I don't get bus sick. Like, I was like, oh my gosh, I can't believe I'm doing this, but I just have to get through it. All of a sudden, the sun comes up, and next thing I know, the bus pulls off to the side of the road, and it just stops. And then people start getting off, and nobody's saying anything to us. And so I get off the bus, and I'm like, what's going on? They're like, oh, they said the bus broke down. And I was like, what? The bus broke down? So my Spanish isn't that great. And I don't know how to say, did the bus break down in Spanish? But I tried to go over and ask in the best way I could, what's going on? And no one would answer. No one would say what I was supposed to do. I was supposed to meet the next tour company that I was meeting in Cusco at a certain time at a certain bus stop. I don't have cell service. And I'm like, oh my gosh, how am I going to get a hold of them? How am I going to get into Cusco? No one's talking to us. And then I see people starting to get their stuff out of the bus and hitchhike on the side of the road.
Oh my God.
I was like, oh my gosh, I'm gonna have to hitchhike. So I waited for the bus driver to pull my stuff off and check my ticket. And then there was a couple people that was from the other tour group that were with me, but they were in a group, and they were basically flagging down other small tour vans that were coming into the city and asking for rides. And of course they're charging. So this one guy stopped, and he wanted to, he was charging way too much. And he was like, oh yeah, I'll take you. And I was like, oh, well, how much are you going to charge? He's like this. And I'm like, no. And he was like, okay. And he drove off. And I was like, whoa, screw you. I'll find something. I'll walk to Cusco. And then the next one came by, and I told him the situation, and he had a bunch of other people in his car that all seemed, they were all workers that were going into town to go to work. And he let me ride. He let me sit. Someone got out of the front seat of the car. They let me sit in the front seat of the car. And I basically hitchhiked into Cusco for an hour drive after our bus broke down, and met my tour person at the same time. But I was like, never could have planned that.
Oh my God. Yeah, I would have been freaking out. So the bus broke down and they're just like, well, you're on your own.
Pretty much.
Wow. Yeah, I think you win for craziest misadventure story. That is wild. You hitchhiked to Cusco. I probably that one might have gotten me. I probably would have been in tears a little bit, but hey, what are you gonna do?
You just got to figure it out,
You
right?
gotta figure it out. But that's the other great thing about traveling solo. You really do learn like how strong you really are, especially like mentally and how resourceful you can be, when you need to be. So I love that. Thank you for sharing that awesome misadventure with us. That one definitely goes in the history books. So now,
Thank you.
Nicole, you do some of everything, right? So what is one activity or adventure that you haven't tried yet, but you want to do?
Snowshoeing.
Me
I want to try
too.
snowshoeing. Let's do it together. I
Me
know who we could go
too.
and do it with. Like I
Me
live in
too.
SoCal. Like we have snow in the mountains, but like you have to drive to get there. It's different from the people who live in like the Pacific Northwest or like the Midwest where they get snow like where they are, and snowshoeing is kind of like a normal thing for them to do. I've never done it, and I want to try it. I keep seeing people post videos and pictures, and I'm like, I want to try this.
I first learned about snowshoeing from We Color Outside when I had Nidra on as a guest, and she told me about snowshoeing with her and the kids as a family. And I was like, what? I need to do this. I need to do it. So, yeah, that's on my bucket list too. What is your next big adventure you've got planned?
I have been wanting to get to the Galapagos Islands. That was on the bucket list for last year for my big birthday plans, but COVID definitely threw a wrench in that. I definitely want to try to go this year, maybe towards the end of the year. If I have to push it to next year for safety and to make sure I'm really going to enjoy the trip, I will. But that is high, high, high in the priority list. I want to dive. I want to see the tortoises. I want to hike. I want to do it all.
Me too. I kid you not, Galapagos Islands is on my vision board.
You're
That
going to
is
get there.
awesome. Are you scuba certified?
I am.
That's still on my list to do. That was supposed to be part of my big birthday this year. We'll see. I hope is something that can happen. I love that. I love how we are kindred adventure spirits. This is awesome because there's a lot of people who will hear Galapagos and they don't know where it is. So just to
Yes.
educate the people, we won't assume. Tell it, where are the Galapagos Islands?
They are on the western coast off of Ecuador, and it is the islands with rich, rich biodiversity and animals, and it's a place that Charles Darwin is credited for quote unquote discovering and coming up with his theories on evolution because of how remote the islands were and the life that lived there was from other areas of the world. But it's really kind of like a snapshot in time.
It is literally like the land before time, and they are known for these giant tortoises. I learned about this place as a kid in elementary school, and we got to like watch via satellite as they did all this exploration and diving. I never forgot that, like ever in my science class. So Galapagos has been on my list all that time. So now, before we let you go, can you leave the listeners with your top three tips for safety and self-defense for women, but really for anybody?
Yeah, and that's really the case. Like everything I teach is non-gender specific. Everything that I teach will work for anybody. My top three would be, first of all, trust your intuition. Your intuition is there to protect you from danger. And sometimes we deny it. We talk ourselves out of it. We try to explain it away. If you find yourself trying to explain something away, that means you're trying to talk yourself out of your intuitive feelings. Really just honor your intuition and trust it. It is there to help you stay out of danger. The second thing is use your voice. That means speaking up for yourself, speaking up for your boundaries, saying no if you need to say no, and being really loud. Predators who are looking to victimize others, they rely on us being quiet or being embarrassed or maybe freezing and not saying anything when something's happening. But if we can find our power in using our voice is actually our first weapon. So find a way to be comfortable using your voice. And last but not least, your body is a weapon. So my third tip that I would say is feel comfortable putting your hands in front of your face with your palms out like this and setting this nice body posture, because anywhere you go in the world, I say that as if people can see me and I forget that we're on a podcast. So take your hands, put your hands in front of your face so you're looking at your palms, and then turn your palms away from you, and then keep your elbows in and move your hands so you're kind of looking through your thumbs. This is what we call ready stance, and it is a universal body language that is recognized anywhere you go. It means stop, back away, leave me alone. I don't want what you're selling. People know what it means. And that body language comes across as very confident and strong, and that in itself can be a deterrent. So to recap, trust your intuition, use your voice, and be comfortable getting into ready stance.
Thank you. Thank you so much for those. Those are awesome tips. I hope you all will jot those down and commit those to memory, because those are 3 very easy things that you can implement into your behaviors right now. So, Nicole, tell everybody, where they can find you, find out more information about you. And I'll have the links that you share also in the show notes too.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much for having me. I look forward to getting to know everybody that is listening. You can find me on my website, NicoleSnell.com, or also my website, girlsfightback.com. I'm on Instagram. My handles are Adventures of Nick, and that's N-I-K, Adventures of Nick, and Girls Fight Back is my other Instagram handle. You can also find Girls Fight Back on Facebook as well.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Nicole.
Thank you so much, Lauren. You're amazing. We are definitely kindred spirits, and I cannot wait to adventure with you one day.
Me too.
Thank you so much for listening. I hope that you enjoyed this episode. And if you did, make sure you subscribe to the Outdoorsy Diva podcast. Be sure to check out Misadventures of an Outdoorsy Diva blog on outdoorsydiva.com. You can also keep up with me and my adventures, so check out all of my social channels. Find Outdoorsy Diva on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and Pinterest.